Wonderful.
Dun, 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 dun. Yay. Greetings. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Although I guess I should also include Wednesday because for our
Correct.
guest in Australia, it is already Wednesday. But here in the Midwest, it is a little cold and dreary, but we'll take it. The snow from yesterday has melted and the hope of spring is in the air. So, welcome to our weekly conversation. I am your host, Renee Zukin. We are here today and every Tuesday at 4:30 Central Time to have these conversations to raise the collective conscious so that we can do the inner work to see the outer change. And I'm so excited to introduce my guest to you today. As I mentioned, Rachel comes all the way from Australia. And she's here to talk to all us parents who have had quite the year, right? About just staying real. Not calm, real, right? So, some real strategies for parents under pressure, which has been the state of the world a little bit more these days. So, let me tell you a little bit more about Rachel, and then we will get into our conversation. She is the founder and director of Create Vitality, a multi-award winning speaker and registered occupational therapist, creative arts therapist, and Qigong practitioner with a fire in her belly about the rights of families raising children with a disability or additional support needs. Over the last 20 years, Rachel has supported hundreds of families navigating the health and community systems in support of a child. She gets that being thrown into a world of appointments, jargon, labels can weigh heavy on parents' hearts and children and leave them feeling exhausted and confused on how to best support their child. And let me stop my screen share here. We all know that every child has, you know, especially in this last year, gone through something that none of us have ever gone through before. So I do know that the strategies and tools that you use are available to all of us parents feeling the pressure, feeling the overwhelm. So welcome, Rachel. I'm so glad you are here with us today.
Thanks, Renee. It's so lovely to be with you. And thank you so much for reminding me about the time change. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you might have been seeing me in my pajamas.
I know. I forgot that, us on this side of the world are the only ones who really do
Yeah.
this silly thing like changing our clocks.
Well, we do it too, but we don't do it till later.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So we've got another one coming up in April.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And not that we need to talk about time change, but I mean, it's another one of those things that kind of throws a wrench in like the body systems and how we
Absolutely.
navigate things. And so it's one more thing. So tell me a little bit. I know that, you've been doing this work for a long time. Um, but what have you found, especially in the last year or so, that parents are really struggling with and needing the
Yeah.
most?
Yeah. So I think that parents are carrying a much bigger invisible load. Like parents are always carrying an invisible load. And from my perspective, one of the most patronizing things I think parents are told repeatedly is to just stay calm. Um,
Don't tell me
and
to calm down.
yeah, and it's not, I'm not anti-calm. It's not like I hate calm. Calm and I are very good friends, right? It's okay. Calm's allowed in my house. And sometimes I wish it would be around a lot more often. But I think that when we tell parents to just stay calm, what we overlook is that calm is often not a common part of parenting. Like if I think about what it's like to be a parent, even just with my own two boys, uh, calm's not the first word that comes to mind. Like it's, I think, circus, I think excitement, I think problem solving, negotiating, planning. There's a lot of putting out spot fires. There's a lot of trying to tend to different needs. And that's just in my own families. And certainly for the families that I serve, there are additional demands over a longer period of time. And so that can be really draining for parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Energy and resources. And a lot of what parents are carrying just sits up here. So it's all the things that the parents aren't talking about out loud. And I'm sure that many of the parents tuning into your community can relate to that invisible load of the worries about, if we relate it back to the pandemic, about how is this affecting my child? What is this going to mean for my child's future? What does it mean when I just don't have the energy to play with my kids because I'm
Yeah.
so busy just trying to get by? What does it mean? What are the impacts of me working from home in these spaces that are supposed to be family spaces, or educating my kids in spaces that used to be family spaces, and now I'm being told what to do by somebody else through a screen? All of those loads, all of those little things add up over time, and they're just exhausting.
I hear that. And my kids are older, so I feel like teenagers have different needs, of course, than smaller children, but the younger children seem to, of course, have more acute needs, especially with attention and ongoing care. The mental load is probably
Yeah. Yeah. And I
um,
think, the other thing that comes up there is because everybody's been living on top of each other for, a year or more now, those spaces where we might normally be able to take space and, renew and recharge haven't been there. So our usual ways of coping or letting off steam, or, finding spaces to let it all go, have been taken away because that's kind of environment has shrunk.
yeah.
So now our work and education spaces are also supposed to be the spaces where we renew and recharge, and it just doesn't work like that.
Right, right. That's true. I mean, and my kids, they're all doing school from their bedrooms, and that's supposed to be their cozy hangout spot.
Yeah.
Um, but in order for us to all be on Zoom at the same time, we have to be in those separate spaces.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
which we're lucky enough to have those
Yes.
separate spaces,
Yeah.
I should say too. But you talk about that the mental load and the emotional load, and I do know, right? I mean, people say, just stay calm, because that's how you can, because if we're escalated and our children are escalated, it just can sort of bubble up. And, I mean, I've certainly been there, we're almost like matching pitch with,
Yeah. Yeah.
with the chaos that's occurring. So what are some of these strategies that you have for parents who are feeling that?
So just before we get into that, I just again want to clarify that we're not wired to feel calm under pressure, right, in terms of the physiological response in the body. And when we see our kids in distress, it triggers distress.
Yes.
Right? It's like that kind of innate, maybe particularly as, I guess I'm speaking as a mother, maybe it happens for dads too. It's like that kind of lioness of the protective mechanisms of wanting to make it stop.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like that real like worry, kind of make this stop. Sometimes it's the frustration of I can't take this anymore, make it stop. Those mobilizing energies of make this stop or get me out of here. But it can also activate that kind of immobilizing energy where we just feel frozen and like we don't know what, we can't feel like we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And just to say that they're our evolutionary protective responses that are being triggered in the face of a perceived threat. And that the more tired we are, the easier it is for those responses to be triggered, because the body makes an assessment of our resources and says, sorry, rational brain, we don't have room for you right now. You're costing too much energy. We got to mobilize these other protective responses to make this stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to say that if you notice that it's harder than usual to find that calm space, that it's not because there's something wrong with you, it's because you're tired.
I'm so glad you said that, and you started there. A friend of mine just recently had a conversation about, how exhausted we were, and she, and our frustration levels. It's like I have nothing left, and I can't, I'm just, I'm throwing my pen down across the table when, and to hear you say, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, because those are the things that we say to ourselves. Like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why can't I hold it together? Why can't I, So it's super reassuring to know that
Yeah.
it's normal. There's a
It's normal.
biological reason.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, that point that you're speaking into there about that shaming that we do when we don't get it right is also part of that invisible load. Like there are so many outdated social and cultural paradigms about what a good mum does, what a good dad does, what a good family looks like, what good kids look like, what they don't look like, that really weigh heavy and add to that load.
It
Yeah.
is. It is absolutely, and especially for parents who have children with any kind of additional needs, or what's the neurodiverse?
Neurodivergent. Yeah.
Yeah, divergent. Yeah, um, which I certainly have some experience with,
Mm.
both at home and in my teaching career. Um, you know, there you need sometimes different strategies. Well, as with any kid, I mean, I have 3 children. The same thing doesn't work for all 3. There's no way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the first step I would say is really giving yourself permission to tune in.
Mm.
And that noticing the impact of that invisible load, and tuning into what is right and good for you and your family, knowing that it might be different to your neighbor or to the other family down the street or to the kids at school, that you have a right to tune into and respond to the things that are right and good for you.
Mm. I love that. You do, because you think you have to fit into this mold
Yeah,
as a
and it
parent.
just doesn't work. Like
No.
I say this all the time in my coaching programs, like we're made from the same stuff for sure, but the way that it expresses itself is different for each of us. So what is going to work for each of us will also be different.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That permission granted to not have to do things the way anybody else is doing them, and doing things the way they work for yourself and your own family.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really
Yes.
important.
Yeah. And so, I was running a masterclass this week actually, and there's a little 3-step formula that I'm wondering might be helpful to share. And this is how I support people to keep it real. And again, coming back to this idea, I'm not anti-calm,
Right.
but when we try and just be calm when we're not actually calm, what parents can get stuck in is pretending to be calm.
Yeah.
And maybe, look, I'm looking at you going, yeah, you've got your pretend calm face on, right? And that's exactly what happens, right? People tense up and they try and put the nothing to see here face on. And, I've had many years of perfecting the exhausting art of pretending to be calm. And it's actually really damaging for the body because it adds more stress that you don't need in those really difficult moments.
Yeah.
So we tense up, we hold our breath, try our best to look calm. And it's actually really confusing for our kids too, because they know that we're not calm. They're not silly.
Right.
The nervous system doesn't lie.
Right.
This evolutionary response is literally hundreds of millions of years old. It knows what it's doing. And so our kids pick up on that. And that's so confusing because we're pretending to be calm when actually our body's giving off all of the signals that we're anything but. And so this keeping it real is actually what I would consider the missing step in paving the way for embodying calm. And so, so I break it down into 3 different steps. So and it also helps bring all of that kind of invisible load that we're carrying about all the things that we feel like we've ever done wrong. It gets triggered as the brain looks for the rule about how to respond to this difficult moment. All of the other times that we've ever faced this same or similar challenge gets kind of triggered. It's like the little file comes out in the brain as the brain goes, okay, how do we do this again? So all of that comes up. And then what tends to happen, particularly when we're tired, is that all of the worries about what this might mean for the future if we get it wrong get triggered as well. Like, oh my goodness, if I stuff this up, my kid's never going to be able to have friends or do well at school or get a job or have a family. Like we can go way, 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 way out into the future. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not to make any of those worries wrong. It's just that noticing that when we go all the way out there and all the way back here, that we're actually adding all of that to that load that we're trying to respond to in the present moment.
Right.
So what I encourage people to do is to set a present moment intention. It's like, and it used the words like right now. So we're bringing ourselves back into the present moment. Right now, my intention is to create connection, or it might be to hold a safe space. And so that gives your mind a focus, and it also brings you back into those kind of values guided decisions. So that you're responding to, this is what I'm hoping to create here.
I really love that right now, because especially that's that way to just start with the thought.
Yeah.
Almost. It's like I see like the vision of it closing those filing cabinet drawers right now.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we're not doing it. Okay.
Yeah. They're there. They're still there. But right now, my focus is here on this moment and what I'm trying to support my child with, or, whatever it is that you're trying to navigate. And then I think it's really important to acknowledge that this doesn't go away just because we stop paying attention to it for that moment. It doesn't go away. It's still there and it still weighs heavy. And so the next thing and this is usually quite a big part of my coaching program, is spending time for the making space for what's real. And it doesn't matter where in the time spectrum it is.
I love that.
It's still real, right? The worries are still real, even though they're not here right now. It doesn't matter that they're 20 years into the future. We still feel it.
Yeah.
And again, when we tell parents to just not worry about it, that's so patronizing. Oh, you're just catastrophizing. It's like, it's real. It doesn't matter whether it's catastrophizing or whether it's not here right now. That weight is real. And so there's a little formula that I invite the parents that I support to use, and it's a combination of that right now. So we name what's happening right in the present moment. So we've got our intention. Right now, my intention is to create connection. Right now, my son is having a big explosion because he's not in control. And a part of me is really worried about what this means. So that little part of me, just a tiny shift, takes us from, oh my gosh, I am so overwhelmed, I don't know how to do this, I just, why does this always happen, to a part of me feels that way. And for me, I notice, and you might have seen that just happen, like I noticed that my shoulders just instantly drop.
Yeah. Well, and because I felt them like almost, teary. I mean, it brought like a, and it does. I mean, it's that heightened level of, what do I do? But also recognizing that space of the sadness almost, or the, that needs that attention too.
Yeah. So now that's got space and it's not invisible anymore, but it's not ruling the whole show. Yep. So there's space for the part of me that doesn't know what to do, or feels like I don't know what to do, or feels overwhelmed, or is worried about the future. When I put a little container around it like that, it also leaves the door open to all the other parts of me that knows how to do this, that has done this before, that knows that it's just a moment in time. And now I can focus it back in on my intention.
I love that.
And then the third step is responding to the present moment needs. So we've got our present moment intention, we've got our present moment reality. Now we're tuning into what are the present moment needs to close the gap between the reality and the intention. And often this is about getting real with the nervous system. So coming back to, what do I need to shift my physiology to create space for this intention that I have? And in my program, we talk a lot about, and maybe it's familiar to some of your families tuning in, this idea of co-regulation. And co-regulation is when we regulate with and through somebody else. And often in a child-parent relationship, it's the child regulating with and through the parent. And again, if we're not supporting parents to tune and respond to what they need, can't actually support co-regulation.
Right.
Because if our physiology isn't in that state that we're trying to cultivate in our kids, we can't support them to do the same.
We talk about that too in education, using co-regulation in a room full of students, right? If you walk in frazzled and distressed, then everybody,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, for educators too, it doesn't just happen. Like, it's not like you just have a button on your
right.
shirt and you go, right,
Go home
I'm all
now.
good now. But what you can do over time is, with this kind of support, to tune in to how you're wired and what your nervous system needs. And acknowledging that for parents and educators and lots of other folk, you can't just press pause and take 2 hours out and go and sit on top of a mountain and meditate. Like,
Be
that's
nice.
not real.
Yeah, but it's not realistic.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Sorry guys, I'll be back in a few hours. We're just going to go and regulate. But what you can start to do is to get really tuned into all those everyday spaces, places, resources that support you to feel nourished and supported, even when you're under pressure. So, for example, I'm sitting in front of them, but this little, it looks pretty, right? But and part of it is set up so that it looks pretty for other people to look at, but part of it is actually for me, because I experience incredible anxiety, performance anxiety, and so doing things like this, getting on camera, right, is a big deal for my nervous system.
Yeah.
And nature is really soothing and nourishing for me. So I've got nature all around the room, so I'm getting cues of nature no matter where I look in my office at the moment. And that chair actually belongs to my grandmother, and I call it the chair of courage because she lived through the Second World War. And so that chair is to remind me that I'm connected to something bigger than me, and that I am always supported, and that there are people out there in the world who are dealing with much bigger things than me getting on camera. And
That's
the pink,
so beautiful.
yeah, and the pink is to remind me that I've made a commitment to show up with an open heart. So that, like, all of those signals, right, are going into my nervous system. And so, again, what I support people in my coaching programs to do is to get really fine-tuned into what are the things that support them to feel nourished, safe, and connected, because they're the things that are going to send those regulation cues to the nervous system and help them take the edge off, to find that embodied calm in those really difficult moments. So that's the 3-step formula for keeping it real. Getting real about your present moment intention, present moment reality, connecting in with the present moment needs.
I love that. We do have a couple people watching. Yeah. Hi, Ingrid. Hi, Amisha. Hi, Jen. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Ingrid is saying, to apply more broadly too. About the wedding. Yes. Any kind of regulation, right? That panic. And I really love that you showed us those pieces. And how it's really possible to put things in place that remind you of that work, how to get that inner calm. And I keep touching my necklace. This is, something that I bought for myself. There's an actual seashell in the middle, and it's that same sort of thing, and it sits right on my heart, and it, just helps remind me. Yeah. I love nervous system talk. It's, it's the thing that it runs everything.
Absolutely. The nervous system is running the show. We think that our rational brain is running the show. It's not true. The autonomic nervous system runs the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love it if any of you have any questions for Rachel. Let us know. Go ahead and put them down in the comments, whether you are watching live or watching the replay. We're happy to have you, happy to answer your questions. This has been really lovely, Rachel, and I'm so grateful that you are here, and I'm so grateful that you are working with so many families and really helping. These conversations and this work that we do in Midwest Elevation is all about, doing the inner work to see the outer change, and the pieces, even one family, right, that can navigate this a little bit differently is going to change, for their own generations, for their own families, for the children that come after, and then it just, spreads out into the world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
it's a beautiful ripple effect.
So I just love the work that you're doing, and I love that that we're here together having this conversation. Anything? Oh, I do want to tell people about your Facebook group.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yes, Rachel runs Mums Matter, right? So, it's a lovely group. I've been honored to be a part of it over the last few months, and love what you're doing and what you offer in there as well. And you certainly don't have to be in Australia in order to receive
you
that.
can tune in from anywhere. Yeah. And just to clarify too, because I do work in the disability and additional needs space, your child doesn't need to have a formal diagnosis to be part of that space. As you were saying earlier, Renee, that the strategies and tips and tools that I share often resonate for all sorts of families. So you're welcome in that space.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, so wonderful. So wonderful to have you. I'll get those links to your Facebook group and to your website out there in the comments for everybody to see. Thank you all for being with us today. Thank you, Rachel, for being here. Thank you, Midwest Elevation. We will be back next Tuesday with another conversation to raise the collective conscious, and we'll see you then.